Hello, my name is Mike Hatch and I've been working on the Ralph Vaughan Williams Fantasia project doing the audio. I've been asked to make a little video to explain the background process to how I've been approaching this project and some of the work that's been involved in it. Now, I've done quite a lot of virtual choirs over the years, stretching right back to even the very first virtual choir with Eric Whittaker, and we've done quite a few since. And they've all got their different problems, they've all got a different sort of approach that's required, and they've all got varying degrees of complexity. Some of them have hundreds and hundreds of singers, some of them have just maybe 20 singers, and the approach that you take depends very much on the kind of music that you're working on. Now, in this case, the Vaughan Williams doesn't have a huge number of singers, but it is a very complex project. It's been very cleverly arranged, and the vocal parts are complicated to sing, and they have to fit together very carefully. So the maximum amount of time I've been spending is to try and get the project to sound coherent when you listen to it in the way that the arranger intended. I'll just give a little brief outline of the process. Obviously, you've all submitted your contributions on video, and I'm working on audio only. So my first job is to strip the video and the audio separately so that later on the audio can be mixed in the way that I need to mix it, and the video is treated separately, and then later on at the end of the project it's married up again to make a finished product. So the first thing I do is take all the audio tracks and then import them into a workstation here. Now, I've been working at home in the last couple of weeks because of COVID, so I've got some equipment laid out on the lounge on the kitchen table here, which is not brilliantly ideal, but have to work in the situation we find ourselves in. So now I'll show you a little bit about how I start to assemble the various components to make the finished product. Right, here we are in front of my workstation, and as you can see, I've got all the various tracks lined up in groups. So you can see here at the top I've got the original guide that was sent to me to make the everything line up. Here was the click and the piano. And then I've arranged all the different parts that you've supplied into groups. So here we've got soprano 1, all the blue, and I've coloured it to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. So if I scroll down, soprano 1, soprano 2, they're in orange. In fact, this is part of section 1, which you redid, and so I've changed the colours to show me the ones that I've replaced. So there we are, there's the soprano 2, alto 1, alto 2, excuse me, a tenor 1, tenor 2, scrolling down here, basses, all the different bass parts, bass 1, bass 2, bass 3 doesn't come in until a bit later, bass 3B, bass 4, bass 5 and bass 6 at the bottom there. So as you can see, the total number of tracks here on this section is 117. Now obviously it's quite an involved process to listen to them all at once. You can't really work on all of it at the same time. You have to break it up into sections. So I have the ability to listen to each section at a time. So let's just go back, for example. If I solo this bunch of tracks here, we can hear soprano 2 on their own. Just the soprano 2 part. And you can see all the different waveforms here. Now there's a bit where they're not quite together, for example. So that one is a little bit early. Now, of course, one of the great difficulties of virtual choirs is that you aren't singing as an ensemble. You're singing it all individually in your own front room. And even when you've got a conductor guide, it's very difficult for everybody to be absolutely in time in the way that they would be in a concert, because you'd have the beat right in front of you. So one of the first jobs is to try and align everything to get it as close as possible in terms of timing in the way it would be in a concert. Now obviously you've put your clicks down, but even when you put the clicks down, the case is that most people tend to drift a little bit off the guide track. So what I tend to do is to try and line up as many of the consonants as possible as I go along, and just by making little nip and tuck cuts in the tracks to try and line them where they are not in sync. So for example, here's somebody that's early, so what I can do, put a little cut in here, and then slide that media to the right a bit to make it in time. So it's better timing now. Of course, I've had to compensate for that by making an edit here further down the timeline, which I can adjust if I need to, and just by listening to that one track, like that. So you can see there's quite a lot of detail involved, and I would say that one thing about virtual choirs is that they all have in common is that there's a lot of time needed. And if you don't put the time in, you won't get a good result. Here's a sopranos. Soprano 1, soprano 2, altos, alto 1, alto 2, tenor 1, here's tenor 1, tenor 2, bass 1, they come in here. Oh, they're not quite together. So this chap is early, so I can just put a little cut in here, slide it slightly to the right, get them in time. Let's just check that. And this chap's early as well. Okay, that's better. And then when you listen to everything all together, you get the glorious result, hopefully. So once it's all been assembled and put into as good a time as possible, the next stage is to try and mix it in a way that it sounds believable and coherent. When it comes to mixing, I prefer to use physical control surface, so with actual physical faders. I know a lot of people work in a computer and work on a mouse. I've grown up in an era where I've always had faders and I've always had desks, so I find it very difficult to work in a mouse, and especially when you've got lots of tracks, because you can't get to the tracks quick. By the time you've put the mouse in the right place, the piece of audio that you need to adjust has already passed when there's lots of tracks involved. So I tend to use control surfaces. This is just connected to the computer with a single cable, but it actually gives me physical control of the electronics that's going on in the computer. Not only does this give me physical control, but I can swipe along here, and you can see that all the different faders can be selected. So even though I've only got 12 channels displayed on this mixing desk, I can actually reach hundreds and hundreds of them. In fact, there's no limit to the number of channels I could have on this. So let's just play a bit and you'll see how the faders move as I've programmed. So I hope that's given you some idea of the work that's involved in the process of making these virtual choir projects, and I hope very much that you enjoy watching the finished product. Thanks very much for watching.